Shalom, giving all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Excuse me. Bahashem, Ruach Kodash. Double honors unto the elders and apostles of great mill stand that rule well. And shalom unto the 144,000 elect men of the nation of Israel and the rest of the elect that are destined to be saved. I'm the brother Kalab, and I'm from the GMS UK London Forecasters Camp, coming back at you with another lesson to edify those of which I spoke of. So this is an article from BBC News, catching up on something that happened earlier on in this week. It says the anatomy of the Prime Minister's downfall, because for those of you who've been paying attention, you'll probably have known by now that the current reigning UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has resigned from his position after months and months of criticism of his leadership. Basically, ever since this guy set foot in office in 10 Downing Street, he's just been making a lot of decisions that have been very controversial, and now it's culminated with him having to step down. Now, this is very interesting because over here in the UK, you've got a long list of prime ministers that have had to exit 10 Downing Street in disgrace over the past pretty much decade, a little bit more than that, because before Keir Starmer came in, you had Rishi Sunak, who went out in disgrace. Before Rishi Sunak, it was Liz Truss, who went out in disgrace. Before Liz Truss, who was it? Boris Johnson, who went out in disgrace. Before Boris Johnson, who was it? Theresa May, who went out in disgrace. Before Theresa May, it was David Cameron, who went out in disgrace. Pretty much going back as far as Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, none of these people have exited 10 Downing Street with people having a positive public opinion or response to them. So this is all obviously a sign of Esau's downfall, because shit just keeps going wrong for him. No matter who he puts in office, it's always got to end up the same way, because Esau is experiencing his downfall according to the will of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. So let's read this article, The Anatomy of the Prime Minister's Downfall. This was published yesterday, I believe. For month after month, week after week, sometimes day after day, we have chronicled the unravelling of Sir Keir Starmer's government. Nonetheless, it still prompted a sharp intake of breath on Monday morning to be standing in Downing Street yet again, awaiting another Prime Minister publicly reading the last rites on their time in the highest office. This wasn't a leader brought down by scandal as Boris Johnson was, nor economic calamity as Liz Truss was. But there were parallels with the downfall of both Johnson, Truss, and Sir Keir, like that both of them had lost capacity to viably govern. When that happens to a prime minister, they are done for. All three lost capacity to govern because their own MPs lost faith in them. And all three stood at the lectern in Downing Street within 4 years of each other extraordinary. Theories about why our last 5 prime ministers have not lasted very long, to what extent is a stagnant economic picture dating back to the financial crisis of nearly 20 years ago to blame, and what about the recent noise of social media? The contributors to the outlook of so many Labour MPs about Sir Keir were multiple, building slowly and then exploding quickly. The cancellation of the winter fuel payment for many pensioners, announced shortly after Labour's general election win 2 years ago and eventually reversed, was one of the many U-turns. Then there was the row over freebies, dubbed by some passes for glasses. And within weeks of Labour taking office, dysfunction at the heart of Downing Street became public when he revealed a briefing war seeking to ensure the removal of Sir Keir's first Chief of Staff, Sue Gray. All of this happened within the first 3 months. Then, just over a year ago, a crucial moment The Prime Minister's humiliating climb down on his planned changes to the benefit system. Yeah, that didn't go down well. The way they were trying to force a lot of disabled people back into to work, threatening to stop their benefits. That didn't go down very well at all. And was probably one of the many points which cost him his position. Bear me a second. It was the moment Labour MPs collectively realised they could push this government around, and so amounted to a massive loss in authority for Downing Street. And all this before the rolling saga and acute embarrassment of the appointment of Lord Peter Mandelson as ambassador in Washington. Lord Mandelson was sacked in September, but the row dogged the Prime Minister for month after month of what would turn out to be his remaining time in office. In the midst of it all, Morgan McSweeney, the man who had been at Keir Starmer's side for the entire time in political leadership, both in opposition to the government, resigned, as did another 10 Director of Communications, Tim Allen. Bubbling beneath all of this, firstly expressed privately and eventually publicly, the growing discontent among Labour MPs about their leader. The private jitters of plenty have been there for ages. It is our job as journalists to chronicle this to the best of our ability, and so to give you a real sense of what is really going on, often a long way from the TV cameras and microphones. By necessity, much of this is off record. Information and sentiments shared with us on the condition we don't reveal publicly who it is we have spoken to in a way that could identify them, sometimes like emails from readers, viewers and listeners expressing frustration that they're hearing about sources or senior figures demand we name people. But if we only brought you the quotes from the people willing to put their names to them, you present a very shallow interpretation of events. Like in any organisation or indeed family, sometimes the most candid views are expressed privately, or at least up to the point that the weight of an opinion becomes sufficiently significant that people choose to share their view more widely. Take a moment in November when we reported via well-placed sources that Sir Keir would fight any attempt to dispose him. The story came to light because the Prime Minister's allies were fearful he faced imminent danger. They were sufficiently fearful that they were willing to advertise their own vulnerability in the hope of diminishing the likelihood of him facing a challenge. By the New Year's Eve, these private conversations meant that I could report 2026 would be Keir Starmer's make or break year, and the likely fulcrum that the political year would be the elections in May. But things accelerated more quickly than some might have anticipated when in February we reported that the Prime Minister's political near-death experience, when the Scottish Labour leader anothrer publicly called for him to go. It was clear then as we reported at the time, that this was unlikely to be the end of the matter, and so it proved. The elections in May solidified in the minds of countless MPs what many of them had long feared. The leader was deeply, deeply unpopular and costing their party support. The view of Labour's MPs channeling what they saw as a view of the electorate calcified a point where Sir Keir's imminent departure became near inevitable. Against that backdrop, he was powerless to prevent Andy Burnham, contrasting the by-election triggered in Makerfield in Greater Manchester to give him a chance to return to Westminster and take over as Labour leader. Now, at the end of a week in which the Prime Minister has set out a timetable for his departure, and the newly re-elected Andy Burnham assembles a programme for government, we witness what remains of Sir Keir's government disintegrating before our eyes. The story of the public spat between the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister over the future of Immigration Minister Mike Tapp is a case study in discipline and coherence in government breaking down. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is furious that one of her junior ministers has, as she sees it, been insubordinate. Tapp is setting out his policy stall as Burnham, expected to be the next Prime Minister, thinks about who will get jobs in his new government. Tapp, incidentally, was super loyal to Sir Keir until the last. And the Prime Minister, who was told by Mahmood last month that he should stand down, has now rejected her public demands to sack Tapp. This is, to put it gently, some distance from a group of government ministers acting collectively and coherently. And what did the scriptures say? If Satan be divided against Satan, how shall his house stand? The last crumbs of power are being brushed away in Sir Keir's final weeks in Downing Street. Meanwhile, in a cluster of offices in Westminster and Manchester, a government in waiting takes shape. Andy Burnham will give a set-piece speech at the beginning of next week, sketch out some of his planned key themes by the middle of the next month. He is likely to be the next Prime Minister. So that's the end of the article. But yeah, as I said, man, this is a visible example of Esau's house crumbling, as the scriptures say. Let's get that. Matthew 12 and 25. And Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall he then his kingdom stand? See, so Satan's divided against Satan. His kingdom is crumbling. As I said to you, for the past decade, maybe beyond that, every Prime Minister that's entered into 10 Downing Street has ended up having to leave in disgrace. As I said, let's go back from Cameron to David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, and now Keir Starmer. So yeah, Esau's through, man. Nothing he puts his hand to will prosper because the Most High is bringing him down. And we're seeing that visibly through these events playing out in front of our eyes. So yeah, that's just a quick one on that. Lord willing, it was edifying. So with that, I want to once again give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Bakakodash. Double honors unto the elders and apostles of great millstone and rule well. And shalom unto the 144,000 elect men of the nation of Israel, and the rest of the elect that are destined to be saved. And I'll catch you on the next lesson, Lord willing. Shalom for now.